How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to preview the round of 16 for the 2022 African Cup of Nations. And of course, coming into this round, there were originally 6 groups of 4 teams, originally 24 teams, and now that all of these teams have played 3 games against the rest of their group, they have now decided which 16 teams will move on and which 8 teams will not. Taking a look at what's going on for this round, they're going to have 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow, 2 games Tuesday, and 2 games Wednesday to get through this round of 16 so that 8 teams will be in the quarterfinal. And once we get to the quarterfinal, I'm going to preview that matchup. So looking at each matchup one by one and taking a look at how all 16 of these teams got here, I'm going to start with today's 11 o'clock matchup. The first matchup of the round of 16 in the Africa Cup of Nations for 2022 will feature Burkina Faso and Gabon. Burkina Faso made it here after finishing second in Group A. In their very first matchup, they would end up losing to Cameroon 2-1 as their lone goal came from Gustavo Sangare. In their second matchup, Burkina Faso would end up beating Cape Verde 1-0 to pick up their lone win of the tournament so far. And then their third matchup, they would in the third matchup, they would end up drawing with Ethiopia with their lone goal coming from City of Bayala. They would finish with 4 points in the table in 3 games, and they were just able to squeak it in. And then they're going to be facing off against Gabon. Gabon made it here after finishing second in Group C. They finished with 5 points in the table as they won one of their matches and then drew the other 2. In Gabon's first matchup, they would end up beating Comoros 1-0 with their lone goal coming from Aaron Bopenza. In Gabon's second matchup, they would end up drawing with Ghana 1-1 as their lone goal came from Jim Alavina in the 88th minute to tie the game up at 1 right before the game ended. And then looking at Gabon's looking at their third group stage match, they would end up drawing with Morocco 2-2. Their goals came from Jim Alavina and Naif Aguerd. Or I guess it was an Aguerd own goal right before Hakimi evened it up at 2. But that is exactly how Gabon would make it here. And once Gabon and Burkina Faso face off today, only one team will advance to the round or to the quarterfinal round. Looking at the second matchup of today is going to feature Nigeria and Tunisia at 2 o'clock. Nigeria enters this matchup as the only team that won all 3 of their games in group stage as they finish at the very top of Group D. In Nigeria's first matchup, they would end up beating Egypt 1-0 with their lone goal coming from Kelechi Iheanacho in the 30th minute. In Nigeria's second matchup, they would end up beating Sudan 3-1. Their goals coming from Samuel Chukwueze, Taiwo Awoniyi, and Moses Simon to help get them their second win. And in Nigeria's third and final group stage matchup, they would end up facing off and eventually beating Guinea-Bissau. Their goals came in the second half from Umar Sadiq and William Troost Ekong. So, of course, Nigeria comes into this round with a lot of momentum. And then Tunisia is going to make it into this round after finishing third in Group F. They finished with 3 points in the table as they won one of their 3 matchups, and then they would go on to lose the other 2. In Tunisia's first matchup, they ended up losing to Mali 1-0 as, like I said, they were unable to score. Lone goal coming from Mali in the 48th minute. In Tunisia's second matchup, they would end up beating Mauritania 4-0, and I believe it was the goal differential which got them in here in the first place. Their first goal come from Hamza Maflouthi, and then they would get a brace from Wabi Kazri, and then their fourth goal would come from Sifedine Jaziri to put them up 4-0, would give them their only goal of the round. And then Tunisia would end up losing their last matchup to Gambia after Farouk Ben Mustafa picked up a red card in the first half, and they had to play their second half without an 11th player, which gave Gambia the opportunity to score in the 93rd minute and pass up Tunisia in the table. But Tunisia will advance. Well, Tunisia is still alive, but they will have to face off against the one team that hasn't lost yet the Cup of Nations. And, of course, the winner of this matchup will advance to the quarterfinal round. Looking at what's going on tomorrow, the first matchup that's taking place tomorrow on Monday, January 24th, will feature Guinea and Gambia. Guinea is in this round after Guinea would finish with the second best record in Group B. They would win one, draw one, and lose one of the three matches. They would have all three different results. In Guinea's first matchup, they would end up beating Malawi 1-0 as their lone goal came from Isiaga Silla in the 35th minute. In Guinea's second matchup, they would go on to draw with Senegal 0-0. And then in Group 3, or I guess in matchup 3, Guinea would end up losing 2-1 to Zimbabwe as Guinea's lone goal came in the 49th minute from Nabi Keita after Zimbabwe scored both of their goals. And, of course, Guinea is going to be facing off against Gambia. Gambia made it here after Gambia would finish with the... Gambia made it here after they had the second best record in Group F. In the three matchups they played, they won two of them and then drew another one. They would tie for Mali with the most points in the table, but because Mali had a better goal differential, Gambia would settle for second in the group. In Gambia's very first matchup, they would end up beating Mauritania 1-0 as their lone goal came from Abli Jallo. Gambia's second matchup would eventually see them drawing with Mali 1-1. That was the lone draw as they and Mali finished at the very top of the table. Gambia's goal came in the 90th minute off of a penalty kick from Musa Barrow. And then looking at Gambia's third and final matchup in the group stage in order to get here, they would end up beating Tunisia 1-0. Tunisia picked up a red card from Farouk Ben Mustafa at the end of the first half. And then Abli Jallo's 93rd goal would give Gambia what it needed to get 7 points in the table and advance to the quarterfinal round. And they're going to face off against Guinea, of course. Looking at tomorrow's second matchup is going to be between Cameroon and Comoros. Cameroon was able to make it here after finishing top of Group A. They would win two of their three matchups, and then they would draw the other one, giving them 7 total points for the table. Cameroon would go on to win their first game versus Burkina Faso in the group stage, as both of their goals were penalty kicks from Vincent Aboubakar. In Cameroon's second matchup, they would end up beating Ethiopia 4-1. They got a brace from Vincent Aboubakar as well as Karl Toko Ikambi. So, of course, giving Aboubakar a 4-goal start in his first 2 games to give a sense of how well he's been playing. And then looking at Cameroon's third matchup of group stage, they would end up drawing with Cape Verde as Vincent Aboubakar would score their lone goal in the 39th minute. He is the only player in AFCON that has scored in every single group stage match to date. And, of course, Cameroon still playing incredibly well. The nation of Comoros enters this round after finishing with the third best record in Group C. They finished with 3 points in the table as they only won one of their 3 matchups and then lost 2 of them. Comoros in the very first round would end up losing to Gabon 1-0. So that's how they got their start. In their second matchup, Comoros would find themselves losing 2-0 to Morocco. That was back on January 14th. And then going into their last group stage matchup with their backs against the wall, they would end up beating Ghana 3-2. They would get their first goal from El Fardou Mohamed Ben Nabuhane in the 4th minute. And then they would end up getting a brace from Ahmed Mogni in the 67th and the 85th minutes to help get them past Ghana and help get them into this round. And now their very next matchup is against Cameroon, against the team with a player who's played in every single game. Taking a look at the 2 matchups on Tuesday, starting with the 11 o'clock matchup, Senegal is going to face off against Cape Verde. Senegal enters the round of 16 after finishing with the number 1 spot in Group B. In the 3 matchups they played, they won one of them and then they drew the other 2. In Senegal's first matchup, they would end up beating Zimbabwe 1-0 for their lone goal of the group stage, as their goal came from a 97th minute penalty kick from their elite forward Sadio Mane. In Senegal's second matchup, they would end up drawing with Guinea 0-0. And then, of course, once Senegal made it to the third round of this matchup, they would end up drawing 0-0 to Malawi as well. However, Senegal was able just to make it through. Taking a look at how Cape Verde was able to make it here. Cape Verde would make it to this matchup after finishing third in Group A behind Cameroon and Burkina Faso. In their 3 matches, they would end up drawing 1, winning 1, and losing 1, giving them 4 points in the table. In Cape Verde's first matchup, they ended up beating Ethiopia for their lone win of the group stage, as Julio Tavares' 46-minute goal would be what they needed. In their second matchup, Cape Verde would end up losing to Burkina Faso 1-0. This was on Thursday, January 13th. And then looking at their last matchup that took place on last Monday, Cape Verde would end up drawing with Cameroon 1-1, as their lone goal came from Gary Rodriguez, but it was just enough for Cape Verde to make it into this round, and they'll face off against Senegal on Tuesday for a chance to see who will go on to the quarterfinal round. Looking at Tuesday's second matchup at 2 o'clock is going to feature Morocco and Malawi. Morocco enters this matchup finishing with the top spot in Group C. In their 3 matchups, they won 2 of them and then they drew 1. In Morocco's first matchup, they would end up beating Ghana 1-0 with their lone goal coming from Sofiane Boufal. And then looking at Morocco's second matchup, they would end up beating Comoros 2-0 as their goals came from Salim Amala and Zakaria Aboukal. And then going into their third and final matchup, they would end up drawing with Gabon 2-2 as their goals came from a penalty kick from Sofiane Boufal, and then an 84th minute equalizer from Achraf Hakimi, their elite defender, who of course would give them what they needed in order to advance to this round. Malawi enters this round finishing with the third best standing in Group B. They finished with 4 points in the table as they won a game, they drew a game, and then they lost a game. In the first group stage match, there was their lone loss against Guinea as they lost 1-0. Their second matchup would end up being a win against Zimbabwe. This was their only win in group stage. Both their goals came from Gabadinho Mango in the 43rd and 58th minute as he picked up a much-needed brace. And then in the third matchup for Malawi in group stage, they would go on to draw versus Senegal 0-0, but they still had enough to make it into this round. And, of course, the winner of Morocco-Malawi will advance to the quarterfinal as well. And then looking at Wednesday's 2 games, at 11 o'clock, the Ivory Coast is going to face off against Egypt. The Ivory Coast enters this matchup after finishing with the top standing in Group E. In their 3 matchups, they would end up winning 2 of them, and then they drew the third, or I guess they drew another one. They did not lose any of those games. In Ivory Coast's first matchup, they would find themselves beating Equatorial Guinea 1-0. Their lone goal coming in the 5th minute from Max Alain Alain. And then Ivory Coast's second matchup would end up as a 2-2 draw with Sierra Leone. Their 2 goals coming from Sebastian Haller, who is the striker for Ajax, who scored in every single Champions League games this year. And then their 65th minute goal came from Nicolas Pepe before Sierra Leone tied the game up in the 93rd minute. But that was their lone draw. And then in their third matchup, they would end up beating Algeria 3-1. Their goals coming from Franck Kessie in the 22nd minute, Ibrahim Sangare in the 39th minute, and Nicolas Pepe in the 54th minute before Algeria scored its lone goal of the game 73 minutes later. Ivory Coast's opponent, Egypt, makes it into the round of 16 with this matchup after they finished second in Group D behind Nigeria. They won 2 of their group stage matchups, losing only 1, their only loss coming against Nigeria. In their very first matchup, Egypt would go on and they lost to Nigeria, actually, as, like I said, Nigeria's lone goal came from Kelechi Iheanacho in the 30th minute. From then on, they would win their other 2 group stage matchups. In match day 2, Egypt would beat Guinea-Bissau 1-0 with their lone goal coming from their elite forward Mohamed Salah in the 69th minute. And then in the third matchup for Egypt, they would end up beating Sudan 1-0 as their lone goal came from Mohamed Abdelmonem, as Egypt was able to make it into this round. And now they're going to face off against Ivory Coast. Only one of those teams will make it to the quarterfinals. And last but not least, taking a look at the second matchup that's going to be going down on Wednesday, January 26th, Mali is going to face off against Equatorial Guinea. Mali enters his matchup after finishing with the top spot in Group F. They and Gambia both had 7 points in the table, but Mali's goal differential was 1 goal better. They ended up winning 2 of their matchups and then drawing their matchup against Gambia, but going through it one game at a time. Mali's first matchup would result in a 1-0 win versus Tunisia after Ibrahima Kone scored the penalty kick in the 48th minute. Mali's second matchup would eventually see them draw with Gambia as their lone goal came from Ibrahima Kone in the 79th minute. That was actually the first goal before Gambia tied it up in the 90th minute on a penalty kick. And then looking at the third matchup so far for Mali going in, they were able to beat Mauritania 2-0. Their goals coming from Masadio Haidara in the second minute and Ibrahima Kone off of a penalty kick in the 49th minute. With this, Mali will advance. And then Equatorial Guinea was able to make it into this round after finishing second in Group E. They finished with 6 points in the table under Ivory Coast as they won 2 games, and then they would end up losing 1 matchup. In Equatorial Guinea's first matchup, they would end up losing to the Ivory Coast. Like I said, they fell just short. This was back on the 12th. Equatorial Guinea's second matchup would see them beat Algeria 1-0. Their goal came from Esteban Orozco Fernandez Obiang Obono in the 70th minute to get them through. And then with their backs against the wall in the third matchup, they would end up beating Sierra Leone 1-0 as their lone goal came from Pablo Ganet. And that would make them the 16th team to make it through. And after this last matchup is played, the 8 winners of these matchups will face off in the quarterfinal. And now we'll give a preview for the quarterfinal on the first day of the quarterfinal, which should be on Saturday, January 29th, unless anything happens. With that said, I want to thank the ESPN and FIFA websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I need in order for this episode. Congratulations to the 16 teams that made it through the group stage, as there were initially 24. As there were 8 teams eliminated to make it to this round, there will be 8 more teams eliminated to make it to the next round. And once we get there, I will continue right then and there. With that said, once again, I want to thank everybody for listening to this piece. Today is Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. And once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Monday, January 24th. And like I said, once this round is over, I will come back with a preview of the quarterfinals right before the quarterfinals start. Thanks for following the world of sports every day with me. Thanks for listening to this piece, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.